So what if the constant tension we hear about with Iran isn't actually about nuclear weapons at all? Today we're going to dig into a source that makes a pretty startling claim, that the real fight is over something much bigger, the global financial system itself. Let's unpack this.
Okay, so on one hand you have the official story. We all know it, right? It's all about Iran's nuclear program and military threats. It's what we hear on the news, day in and day out. But the source material we're looking at today paints a completely different picture. It says the real war isn't military, it's financial. And it all centers on one thing, Iran's independent central bank.
I mean, that just raises a huge question, doesn't it? Is this source basically saying that this entire decades-long story about nuclear weapons is just a distraction? According to this analysis, yeah, that's exactly what it's saying. The real story, it claims, is buried deep in the plumbing of the world's financial system.
And that gets us to the absolute core of this argument. The source claims that a lot of these global conflicts aren't about changing regimes in the old-fashioned sense. Nope. The real target, it says, is the independent central banks of these countries. But why? Well, because they're seen as the last roadblocks to a single, fully unified global financial system.
This is a really fascinating quote from the source. It calls Iran a big leakage in the system. A leakage of what exactly? What does that even mean? Well, according to this theory, it's a leak in a financial plan that needs total, centralized control to work. Any country that operates outside of that control becomes a major problem for the whole structure.
This slide really breaks down why Iran is considered such a critical leak. First, it supplies a ton of energy to China. By doing that, it helps make the BRICS nations, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, more financially independent. They're building their own payment systems, which is creating a real alternative to the current setup. And that directly undermines the supposed goal of having one single, centrally controlled financial model for the whole world. Okay, so let's follow the logic. If the goal is to plug all these leaks and get every central bank into one big system, what's the end game? What's it all for? This is where the source introduces a concept it calls the control grid, a huge digital infrastructure that it claims is the ultimate goal of all of this.
So what is this control grid? The source defines it as this massive digital net, basically, designed for mass surveillance and, at the end of the day, control. And we're not just talking about passively collecting data here. The source describes a system that's built to actively manage and influence our behavior. The source says this grid is built on three main pillars. You've got a universal digital ID system, all the physical hardware like cameras and sensors, and, the most important one, something called programmable money. And it's this first pillar, the money itself, that's supposedly the real key to the whole thing.
All right, let's zoom in on that first pillar, because according to the source, it's the engine that would make this entire system run. We're not just talking about going cashless. This is about changing what money is at a fundamental level.
Here's the crucial difference. Programmable money isn't neutral. It's an instrument of policy. It would have rules literally hard-coded right into it, rules that can be watched and enforced from a central point. That means every single transaction you make could become a controllable event. And the source gives some really stark examples of what this could actually look like. Imagine your money is programmed to just stop working if you travel too far from home. Or think about a kill switch in your car that could be flipped remotely if you break some rule. In this kind of world, rules are no longer debated in parliaments or Congress. They're just coded directly into the money we all have to use.
And of course, to enforce these kinds of rules, you need a truly massive surveillance network. This is where that third pillar, the hardware, comes into play. We're talking cameras in your neighborhood, cell towers every few hundred feet, satellites watching from above, all of it feeding a constant stream of data into huge AI centers just to monitor everyone in real time.
Okay, but wait a minute. A system this huge, this all-encompassing, being built in secret? It sounds almost impossible, right? So why isn't this front-page news every single day? Well, the source offers a really interesting explanation for how something so big could be hidden in plain sight.
The source uses a really powerful metaphor to explain this, the third rail. Now, if you've ever been on a subway, this will probably click immediately. For everyone else, let's just break down what that means. You know how on a subway track, you see the two main rails that the wheels run on? But the real power, the electricity, comes from that third rail, the one you're told never to touch. And honestly, the one you probably don't even notice. The argument here is that the true system of control works exactly like that. It's the part that has all the real power, but it's designed to be completely invisible to most people.
And how do you make something invisible? You make it boring. The source argues that the fact that things like central banking are so dry and complex isn't an accident, it's a feature. It's basically a form of camouflage.
So here's the bottom line. When you hear all this complex jargon about monetary policy or Tier 1 capital, your eyes just glaze over. The source claims this is totally intentional. The complexity acts like a wall to keep the public out and to stop us from asking too many questions about where the real power is.
And all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. If the money we use is no longer just a simple tool for exchange, but becomes a piece of software full of rules that can dictate what we can and cannot do, who gets to be the programmer? Who gets to write the code that will run our lives? That's the provocative thought at the very center of this entire analysis.